Welcome back. In today's video we're talking about sewing mistakes that make your garments look subpar. If you think your sewing is rubbish, take on board these nuggets of information I'm going to give you today, because that means you will wear your garment with pride. You'll be so happy with your finished product. So the first tip I have for you is that everyone makes mistakes, and we need to accept that and have a seam ripper at hand. So basically we think that we've cut a garment out, we put it under the sewing machine, and every stitch we stitch is a perfect stitch and we don't have to unstitch anything, or we don't have to redo anything. It's just like, if we're perfect at sewing, our garment will come out perfect the first time. Ask anyone who's a professional sewer. If you're a professional sewer, leave a comment down below. We all make mistakes. Granted, when you're professional, you make less mistakes, but you still make mistakes and we still have to go back and fix them. And that's why you're going to find a seam ripper in... I'm holding it like I've got a seam ripper in my hand. I haven't, just in case you were confused. We have to understand that everyone makes mistakes, and we're going to continue to make mistakes. So we need to stop stressing out about those tiny little mistakes. They happen, and they happen less if you stop stressing out. So the next tip I have for you is that you really need to develop your confidence through experience and practice. When I think back to when I was first sewing, when I can still remember holding a pattern in my hand for the very first time, thinking it was a simple pattern, and I was thinking, this isn't difficult, all it is straight lines. Well, here I am 10 years later, sitting there laughing at beginner me. I had a lot to learn and I made a lot of mistakes, and what I really didn't understand is that I needed practice. By practice I mean getting a piece of paper and sewing it without any thread in the machine and sewing straight lines. If I needed to do a buttonhole, practice that buttonhole on scrap fabric before. As long as you use the exact same fabrics that you would in the real one, you're going to get really, really good. If you need to do bias binding, practice on scrap. Every time I say scrap, I go to say paper. Scrap fabric, and then you will be better when you're producing your final garment. It's going to make your project take longer, but in the long run, you're going to learn more skills and you're going to learn them more quickly. So the next tip I have for you that is going to make you make less mistakes and have a higher end garment is to actually read the instructions before you start sewing. So I'm talking to those of you who use patterns to sew, and I'm really bad for this. I never ever read the instructions. I hold my hands up to this one, but if I did, I'll make less mistakes. So lately, since I've come back to sewing, I've been trying to get into the practice. When I'm going to embark on a pattern, I sit and read the instructions step by step before I even think about doing anything to do with the pattern. As we become more experienced, we think we know what we need to do. We see a top and it will say add bias binding, and we think we know, and then you're in that moment, aren't you? And it's just like you're kicking yourself, done it wrong again. Why didn't I read the instructions to see how they're doing it? It may be that the pattern instructions offer a different way to do a technique, a more efficient way than the way that you currently know how to do it. And also, if you're brand new to sewing, reading the instructions is going to make you much braver. It's going to make you much more confident that you can produce the piece that it's asking you to produce. That's going to raise your self-esteem, and then you're going to be really excited to try new patterns that you currently think are out of your skill set. So the next tip I have for you is don't sew when you're tired, hungry or stressed or any other negative emotion, because you are going to make mistakes and then your garment is not going to look how you want it to look once it's finished. You saw in my video where I made my linen top. Halfway through, I was just so stressed out with the project that I had to step away, and I stepped away for a week because that was the right thing to do in order to get the garment that I wanted to get at the end of the day. If I had continued, it would not have been enjoyable. I would have been just finishing it to finish it. I would have been rushing through the steps as fast as I could. I would have been making mistakes. I would have been not going back and fixing those mistakes, and my garment would not have come out half as good as it actually did. So I would recommend that if you're tired, find something else to do. It might be that depending on your mood, you choose certain things to do. So it might be making some adaptations, or it might be cutting out your fabric, or it might be applying your interface and doing a small job and saving the actual sewing for when you're really on your game. I find that if I've slept well, I'm well hydrated, I'm well fed, that is the time when I want to sew, because that's the time when my garment will come out the best. Let me know down below if you have ever had a garment that has come out really bad just because you were sewing it when you were not feeling it. So my next tip for you is to sew slowly. It's not a race. It is not a race. As much as social media would have us believe it's a race, it's not a race. When we start to sew, we want we want an easy garment, one that we can make in an hour or two, and then we can feel really accomplished. It's really weird. We have this feeling that the faster we sew a garment, the better it is. I feel like we're all like that. Certainly I am like that. It's more rewarding when we sew faster. But actually it's not, is it? Because when we sew faster, we make more mistakes, we cut corners. If we take it slowly, do a bit at a time, step away, as I said when we were tired and that. Frederick, I've got a moany cat here, he wants his food. Are you going to let me film? So take it slow, absorb the experience, take it in, learn as much as you can from your making of your garment, and then you are going to come out and be a lot happier with the final result. The next tip for you to avoid all those silly mistakes is to make a twirl. I know we're not a fan of making a twirl, are we? We're just not. I'm not, you're not, he's not over there, she's not over there. None of us are fans of making twirls. But as you saw in my last garment, if you do make a twirl, you'll think your dress, your garment, your top, your trousers, whatever it is, it's going to come out so much better. Now, I always do twirls now because I've had so many ill-fitting I've had garments where I've come on camera, like earlier in my journey on YouTube, I would come on camera to proudly show off a garment and I just was not happy with it. The shoulder was hanging down, or I needed a full bust adjustment that I just didn't do, and it was because I didn't do a twirl. I just sewed the thing up. It's a mistake I just won't make, and now I'm spending money on quality fabric, but I will do once my fabrics have run out. I don't want to be making clothes that I don't feel comfortable in, and when I don't get a good fit, I don't feel comfortable in them. Twirls are not only about the fit. If you make a wearable twirl, which is basically a version of it where you finish everything. I don't finish anything on my twirls. I just do the absolute minimum just to ensure the fit is right. But if you do a wearable twirl where you do finish the garment, that can serve as a practice. So any mistakes you make will be ironed out in that practice run. So when you go to make it in your favourite fabric, you're going to have a much better garment. In the linen top, I ended up having 4 twirls. Now that's excessive. You shouldn't need to do that. And in most cases, you don't need to do that. And as you can see from the blue top I had to the linen top I had, the fit was so much better in the linen top. Even though I'd already done 3 twirls for the blue one. And the blue one was fitting a lot better than the very first twirl. The very first twirl I did was like a tent on me. It's just worth your time and effort to do a twirl. So the next one is a biggie, and that is if you hear or feel something wrong with your sewing machine as you're sewing, stop immediately. Now, I say this from experience. I'm the sort of person who, I'm sewing along, I start hearing clock, 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 and I don't stop. I just think, oh, it'll be all right, and I continue. Or I might see it bunch up at the back, and then I unbunch it and carry on, and it bunches up again. And I'm like, no, it's all good, it's all good. Then you take it out of the machine, and it's a complete and utter mess. Don't do what I do. Don't be like Claire. If you hear a noise that doesn't sound right, or the tension feels off when you're sewing, maybe on the foot of your pedal, then stop immediately. Assess the situation. fix what needs fixing, and start sewing again. This is even more important on the serger than on the sewing machine, but you really want to do it on both. That's also going to reduce your mistakes significantly. So the next tip is, if you're unsure how to do something, whether it's a whole pattern, whether it's a technique, whether it is an adaptation, whatever it is, if you don't know how to do it, look it up on YouTube. I always do when I'm embarking on a new pattern, even though I'm quite experienced now. I'll search for that pattern, I'll search for a sew along on YouTube and watch that to see how someone else does it. And that will inform me and help me to make better choices when I'm sewing my own. For example, when I made my linen top, I'm talking about the linen top a lot because that's my most recent make. When I had to put the shoulder seams, the yoke, into the gathers on the shoulder, which I told you that I had trouble with, before I did it, well, I read the instructions in fact, could not work it out. So I went to YouTube, looked at a sew along, saw how someone else did it, and it made complete sense. I'm a very visual person. I was then able to do it and not make mistakes that I would have made if I hadn't seen that tutorial. I have a couple of sew-alongs, actual sew-alongs on my channel, so I'll link those down below in case you want to have a watch of those. But really, you need to be looking up sew-alongs for the specific garment that you are making or the specific technique that you are trying to do. So the next tip is to change your mindset. You're looking at your garment, you think it's rubbish because all you see is mistakes, whereas someone's coming up to you going, oh my God, that garment looks amazing on you. They're seeing the positives. When we are involved in a garment, in the making process, we're focused on every little aspect and it can become like you can't see the wood for the trees. So maybe take a step back and actually admire what you have done right as much as you're looking at what you have done wrong. So this goes back to what I was saying at the start. We have to really understand that making mistakes is a part of the process of learning to sew. What I find is once I've made a mistake once, I'm not going to make that mistake again. Every garment that you've made on your journey is helping you to make a better garment in the next one. And when you really understand deep down that mistakes are not the end of the world and that mistakes can be fixed, especially in sewing, then you're going to be much more relaxed. You are going to make less mistakes. You're going to educate yourself. You're going to learn everything you need to learn in order to make the best garment that you can. Leave me a comment down below. Let me know what your biggest takeaway from this video was. Check out this video here, which is sewing secrets you wish you knew, which is also going to help you level up your garment to the next step.